Good morning, everyone. We are live on YouTube and Instagram again. Second week in a row, we are back. Welcome to Coffee Time with Trey. Um, this is our weekly opportunity to get together, hang out, chat about coffee, about reptiles, about really anything at all. I'm Trey. I am one of the co-owners of Cold Blooded Caffeine, and I am by myself this week. McKendrick is out of the office. He is traveling on a cruise. So we don't get many vacations around here. And so it's a rare opportunity for him to get out of the office. He hasn't taken a vacation in a while. So good for him, but that means that I am running double duty this week. I was last week a little bit as well. He had to take some time to go to a mentor program. So I'm pulling double duty. So that is why I have the coffee run shirt on this week, because I am running the delivery route, in addition to my roasting duties. So I see some people joining on Instagram. Hey, everyone. Great to see everyone joining in. I'm glad you could participate in Coffee Time with Trey this morning. So I had a couple of thoughts that I wanted to share today on our live. I One of them is that I am a fairly avid reader. One of the things that I enjoy to do while I roast coffee, like in between roasts and my like between batch protocols, is I'll read an article or something, and I particularly because of that like magazines, and so I subscribe to quite a few different magazines, and I was going to share those with you. Of course, I subscribe to Roast magazine, which is one of my favorite coffee related magazines. And then I have, of course, Entrepreneur magazine, which is it helps come up with ideas and understand a little bit more about business. And then for news, I do The Economist, because I try to find an unbiased news source, and of course, like, so The Economist is a British news magazine, and so I tried to get more of a global perspective. Well, an interesting thing, usually, as you could tell based on those different magazines, there's not a whole lot of overlap that usually happens with the reptile world, or the coffee world or anything like that. Yeah, coffee and roast magazine, that makes sense, but there's not always a lot of business stuff in there, and there's hardly ever any reptile stuff in there, and so it's pretty rare where there's an overlap in my reading. Usually it's, oh, I'm going to read about coffee and I'm going to read about reptiles, or I'm going to read about business. But I came across something this past week in reptiles. I mean, in The Economist, and I wanted to share it to you because I thought it was very interesting. Let me see if I can find the article really quick. It was, I think it was last week. It was this one. It was about um, it was about cane toads, and it was about the impact of cane toads in oh yeah, here it is. It's called Wart Wars, and it's in the science and technology section, and it's about cane toads and its impacts on the environment in Australia. And I found it very interesting because they were talking about scientific ways to combat cane toad um, reproduction and invasiveness in Australia. And I found it interesting because that ties in directly with two of my interests, actually maybe even all three of my interests, which were reptiles and amphibians, of course, wildlife conservation, or protecting native habitats from invasive species, and also the business side of trying to um, combat this problem. And what the article was talking about was ideas for like genetic modifications to tadpoles, so that they would never evolve. So the cane toads can be car- um, cannibalistic as tadpoles, and so they can eat if they're in dense populations, which is very common with cane toads. They can actually eat tadpoles of their own species. And so what the article was talking about was they were looking at ways to use genetically modified tadpoles that never metamorphose into frogs that will then cannibalize other tadpoles. Now, of course, my big concern with that is that um, are we just creating another instance where we're going to have an animal species that humans are introducing into an environment that could cause problems that we don't understand. And so the article is very specific that they have not released any of these animals into the environment yet, and that they're doing a lot of testing and everything. But I thought it was very interesting that they're using they're thinking outside the box, right? Because when I saw the article, I always get hesitant when I see reptile related articles in non-reptile related publications, because I get worried about how it's going to spin the light, like how it's going to spin in the light of the animal. And I thought this article did a really good job of talking about the reasons why cane toads were originally introduced, and why that was a mistake, and things that are happening to ethically maintain those populations and try and eliminate those from native habitats. They also talked about trying to genetically modify some of the predator species. I think it was called a quall. It's a small, qualls, a small ferret-like marsupial that is critically endangered in parts of Australia. That scientists are trying to modify so that they can uh, not be poisoned by the bufotoxin that the cane toads release. And so that's one of the big problems with cane toads, if you're not aware, is that they produce toxic uh, poison from their huge glands on the sides of their head, and they can kill predators and are really good at surviving, and so they just reproduce without a lot of check. And so they're trying to genetically modify some of the predator species that can then consume the cane toads and get rid of them. It's all interesting stuff. I mean, I know that there's going to be a debate back and forth on the ethics of genetically modifying animals and things like that. So I understand that that's a concern and might be a concern for you listening, that, oh, this just doesn't align with my values. More so, my thought was that it's an interesting attempt to try and combat a problem that people caused, right? So this is not a natural problem. This is a problem that people introduced. It was in order to try and stop some native pests that were beetles that were interrupting like sugarcane harvest. And so they introduced these toads. Of course, it got out of hand, and now they have a huge um, natural issue with or issue with nature with these toads. And so more so, I thought it was a very interesting approach to that. The other article, right next to it, actually, in the Economist, which is again unexpected, two reptile related articles in one magazine that's not reptile related. On the other side here, we have a black mamba, and again, when I see black mambas in full on threat display, I get a little concerned as a reptile lover. But again, the article was very well thought out. It's talking about snake bites and rethinking how we approach antivenom in terms of treatment of snake bites, especially in areas of the world where they're not readily available or not available at all. And so they were talking about looking into different ways of production of these different antivenoms, trying to find ones, because right now the most antivenom is specific to an individual species. So maybe some of you aren't aware. I actually was bitten by a canebrake rattlesnake almost 3 years ago now, April of 2021, or 2022, April of 2022. I was bitten by a canebrake rattlesnake in my left shin. And so I have some firsthand experience with the administration of antivenom, and what that process is like, and I can tell you that it's a very stressful process. It's a very expensive process, and so I tend to be in favor of any thing that people can do to try and get that cost down and make it more widely available. And so what they're doing is they're looking at different proteins within the the venom to try and attack, as opposed to creating. So what they do now is they inject venom into a host species. You sometimes, I mean, horses are a pretty common one, and then they can synthesize the immunoresponse from that um, from that injection, and then they use that to create the antivenom. And so what they're doing now is they're looking at other ways to try and attack that, because that technology, that process is quite old, and it hasn't been really updated in quite some time. Again, so I'm not a scientist. I'm not a geneticist. Uh, I'm not working in the venom world. I just know that, anytime that scientists are looking at ways to improve the process of creating or making venom and making it widely available, and what this new process is going to do is it's going to try and make it available at a higher um, level. So, like, instead of having to have venom for uh, like black mamas, they're going to try and have an antivenom for like all of elapids, right? That will cover a wider array of species, so that they don't have to have three or four different types of antivenom in stock in a poison control center somewhere, um, and they can actually just focus on a higher level. And I think that's great. So that's my story for today, is that I did not expect, when my weekly The Economist magazine came, that there would be two articles about reptiles in there, and two, I thought, very well written, very well researched articles. So if you subscribe to the Economist, I would certainly suggest checking it out, and if not, I'm sure the articles might be available on their website. So give those a look if you're interested. So that is topic number one for the day. Topic number two, I'm going off script because this is coffee time with Trey, and Trey can do whatever he wants on his live stream, because that's the way it works. So I want to get into the conversation a little bit about music and about the Grammys, because I have some thoughts. So I'm going to share my thoughts with you. I've been thinking a lot lately. Starting to get into these live streams means that I have to have a lot more content, and I have to be thinking about things that are relevant in the moment. And I think that things change rapidly in the world of business, in the world of coffee, but not necessarily to the point where I can have 30-minute conversations every week on changes that impact you in the coffee world that you're going to care about. Of course, things that impact me, like tariffs and trade agreements and supplies and famines, or not famines, and droughts and things like that. Those are impactful to me, and I know some of our friends in the coffee world would care about those, but probably the general public doesn't care about too much. But what we do care about is music, and I like music, and I'm going to talk about music because I can. So I uh I have some thoughts on the Grammys this year, and it might not be what you think it's going to be. So let me explain. Just a little background on me. I consider myself a musician, multi instrumentalist. So I play guitar. I can play piano, although I don't claim to play it well. I play drums. I can play banjo. And most other string, I can play bass. Most other stringed instruments, I can dabble around with. So I feel like I come from a place of semi knowledge on things musically. I did, for a while in school, pursue a minor in music theory and music production, but decided, based on my timeline to graduate, I did decide to drop that minor. So I do not have a minor in music, but I do have formal education in music. And so I have some thoughts on some of the the category choices for the Grammys, and I thought I would share those with you. So for the most obvious one, I thought that I disagreed with. I did not watch the Grammys. I do not watch the Grammys. I tend to not appreciate the uh, the current state of the music industry, and so I don't really support some of the decisions they make. But this year was a bit of a controversial one, and so I thought I'd weigh in, having watched the recaps, the some of the performances, and then also understanding who won some awards. So let's talk about the one that strikes me as just the most insane. Is not the one that I think you're gonna think I'm gonna talk about. The one that I think is the most insane is the Beatles winning rock performance of the year, when the Beatles have not performed in public as a group since like the late 60s. I just can't imagine like having a winner of the best rock performance of the year be an AI version of a song that was recorded in like the 60s. It just doesn't make sense to me. So that's my take on my first takeaway on the Grammys this year. My second takeaway, and probably the one that I'm going to get the most flack for, and I don't care because it's an opinion and it's music. I am not upset that Beyonce won both the best country album and the album of the year. I'm not upset about it. Would I have picked that album? So I listened to the album. I listened to it through. I thought deeply on it because when I heard that Cowboy Carter was nominated for Grammy for the best country album of the year, I was hesitant because, like I said, I do consider myself a musician, and I did grow up in the southeast of the United States, and I do care deeply about country music because that's the music that I remember, as a kid listening, and that was the music that was influential to me, growing up, and so I care about it. I country music is not my favorite genre of music, currently, but I do still care about it, and I do still listen to it on occasion. And so when I heard that, I got a little defensive, and I was like, "That's not fair." The only song that I've heard off of that album is Texas Hold'em, and while it's not my favorite song, and it's not my favorite song on the album, I cannot disagree that it's a country song. Like, it might be a hip, a mix between, like, it's got hip hop influence, it's got country influence, it's got some rock influence to it, rockabilly influence, but it could be considered a country song. So knowing that Texas Hold'em was on that album, and knowing that I didn't particularly care for that song, I was like, oh, okay. I don't think it's going to be. I can't imagine this going to be. It should be country music album of the year. But I listened to it. I listened to the whole thing straight through, and came away fairly impressed, to be honest. Um, I thought that it was a complete work, which is very important for me in terms of like album of the year. So the way the album flowed, I thought was really really nice. There wasn't any point in the album that I started thinking like, oh, okay, I'm going to move on to something else. I thought that it was I thought that you could tell that Beyonce put a lot of effort into it. It wasn't just something that she did for a record label. I think it meant something to her to put this album together. It was kind of like a homecoming, is what it felt like. The themes were interesting. I thought that they were very well thought out themes, and the way they flew, the way the album flowed, and the themes were consistent throughout. I thought it was a very masterful work. It was it album of the year in terms of like compared to some of the great albums of all time. Like, where does it stack up? I don't think it's an all-time great album. But looking at some of the other selections for album of the year, I think it was the most complete work. I thought that musically it was very diverse. I thought that it brought in a lot of different influences. Her vocals were outstanding as you would expect. The musicianship was very good sonically speaking. Like it changed the way the songs were presented changed throughout the album, which I thought is very difficult to do and do so cohesively. So I was very impressed with the album. I know that it's gotten some critically back and forth, reviews in terms of, is it a country album? Is it not? I don't care. Honestly, I don't care what genre you put it in. It doesn't matter to me. And this is coming from someone that deeply cares about traditional country music. Um, when you look at the album, and I know on the surface there are hip hop and R&B songs on that album, and I understand. And I understand that she is a pop artist and a hip hop and R&B artist, like at her like most of her records. Okay, that's fine. Um, the themes on this album are very much country music style themes. There are messages of revenge. So like if we say that some of the songs aren't country music, then like the Carrie Underwood song, uh, before he cheats, it's very similar songs on that album to this one. And Carrie Underwood's song, the theme of that, of her music is certainly country music. I think that theme carries over into this album. There's themes of defending country like lifestyles. Like there's mentions of different areas in the South and pride and being and growing up there. Very much country music themes. There were themes of, like Levi jeans and different uh, articles of clothing that were tied to country. There are themes of love and themes of hate and everything. So to me, if you categorize some of the modern country music, like I don't keep up with a lot of them, but like if you've got Florida Georgia Line and Hardy and some of these more hip hop or rock, or even like Jason Aldean is more into that rock style country. I think if you categorize some of those as country, and then you look back as to what country was when you're talking about George Strait and Garth Brooks, and even further back Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash and Hank Williams Jr. and Hank Williams Sr. and all of these different types of country artists, I can't say, like, I don't think it's fair to say that record's not that Beyonce's record's not country when we look at the progression of where country music is from where it's come from. So that's kind of mentally where I am in terms of, is it a country album or not? Ultimately, it doesn't care. It's a mix of genres. I think it's a country album with hip hop and R&B influence. There's certainly gospel influence to it. There's certainly jazz influence. There's certainly blues influence on it. So you can call it whatever you want. Am I upset that it won the Grammy for Album of the Year? No, I'm not upset about it. Am I upset that it won Grammy for Country Album of the Year? Um, so just personally, this is nothing against the Beyonce album. I already said that I wasn't upset about it. I would have picked the Chris Stapleton album as the country album of the year, but that's just my personal taste in music. So that's kind of where I am mentally. I prefer, but again, I don't think it's fair to say that Chris Stapleton's album is a better album than Cowboy Carter was in Beyonce's album. I just think that the style of music, Chris Stapleton is much more guitar forward. It's much more simplified music. It's just guitar, amp, drums, bass. That's it. I tend to prefer that style of music. And so that's where I am with that controversy. And I think that the people that are getting super worked up about it have kind of lost what the meaning of the music is all about. Right? I mean, it's to enjoy listening to the music. And we have, as music listeners, have created these categories of genres, and are trying to put things into a box where the artist is trying to be creative and get out of a box. And so I don't have a problem with the fact that it's a country album of the year. I don't have a problem that it was album of the year. I think that it was an artist that was taking the resources that they have available and being as creative as possible with that and trying to deliver a message to the world. And to me, it was done well, and it was done in a way that I could appreciate and enjoy listening to, even though it's not my typical go-to style of music. And to me, that's a great album. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, it's all arbitrary. We put these categories up, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. Um, I know that we may differ, and that's fine. I don't like all kinds of music, but I do have a fairly wide um, spectrum of music that I enjoy, and so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And I'm okay being. I mean, I'm not wrong. Like I can't be wrong, but I'm okay being disagreed with on this subject. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. I am running out of time here. I'm trying to keep these streams to 30 minutes or less, so I'm running out of time here. Um, but I do enjoy having these conversations with you. I do appreciate that we got some comments in there. Summit Grounds, I appreciate you hanging out with us. Other coffee people in the chat. I'm not just hanging out with old stinky reptile people. Love you guys. I'm one of them too. And so I appreciate you guys being in the chat and hanging out. I really like doing these live streams because I get to talk to you guys in person and do these things. So feel free to interact with us. I'd love to answer any questions that you guys have related to coffee, related to reptiles and amphibians, anything at all. This is Coffee Time with Trey, but it doesn't have to be coffee time. Trey has a lot of different interests and things that I'm interested in. So feel free to ask anything. I won't be offended, or I'm not. I have thick skin, so if you have something that you don't like or disagree with me, I'd be happy to talk about those things. So hope you guys are having a great week so far. I have a tough week ahead. Of those of you that joined late, McKendrick is out of the office. He is out until next Tuesday. He'll be back. So I'm doing double duty in the roastery as well as on the delivery service. So send some love my way. Wish me luck, and we'll try and make the best out of this. And then hopefully I'll get a vacation at some point this year as well. I think I've got something planned with family here. I can't remember if it's the last week of July or the first week of August. My family tends to do something that weekend. So, but I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. We'll be around on the social medias and everything. So stay tuned. Take a look at all that kind of stuff. And please continue to support all the different channels. It really means a lot to us. Hey, Jeremy, what's up, man? Great to see you. Thanks for joining in the chat. We're just about to wrap up, so sorry I'm about to cut you off here, but I've got to hit the delivery route and make some coffee sales, and try and make a living in this world. So hope you guys have a great week. We will talk to you again next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Before I forget, so we're getting ready to get into some busy time of year. So on these live streams, it's going to get a little bit hectic coming into March area. So we've got 2 shows in March. We've got NARBC Tinley Park in the middle of March. I think it's like the 13th through the 15th or something like that, the middle of March. And then we've got NARBC Dallas at the end of March. That's usually an April show, but I think the way it worked out this year is that it's on the back end of March. So we hope to see you. We hope to see you at Tinley. I will see you, Jeremy, at Tinley. Yes. I will see you at Tinley. And then in Dallas, I hope to see you guys there. That one is the last week of March. And then we have the All-American Reptile and Plant Show, which is a sort of new show for us in April, I think the back end of April. So we hope to see you. That's in Charlotte, if I didn't mention that. So we hope to see you either in Tinley Park, in Dallas, or in Charlotte here in the next couple of months. If not, we will see you right here every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. So hope you have a great week, and we will catch you again soon. Bye, everyone.